During this course, we have been discussing racism and slavery in great detail. We have very specifically talked about slavery in America, going back to accounts that transpired between the 17th and 20th century. Discussion has covered various topics, from slave trade to how the Irish American communities were singled out during the immigration wave. In the 1960s, James Baldwin discussed racism in the African community that shed some light on a word that is as much controversial as it is powerful. Powerful because it still represents and is a reminder of slavery and all of the horrors that accompanied it. In a video, James discusses how the N-word originated and his take on why it came about. The use of the word nigger is a word that was created by the whites in an effort for it to be demeaning, to not only support the physical abuse slaves endured, but also verbal abuse. Baldwin argues that the word comes from a place that reflects as much as African Americans as it does on whites. He says that what you say about anyone else is mostly about your own psychology and necessity. More than describing others, it speaks about yourself. In speaking about slavery and the N-word, we must discuss African diaspora. On this website, it outlines how over a period of almost 4 centuries, 4 million Africans were transported to North America and the Caribbean islands in the Atlantic slave trade. Captured from their homeland and separated from their tribes and families, they were enslaved in a new world, where all familiar customs were absent. The African diaspora is a story of how Africans, though scattered dispersed, managed to retain their traditions and reform their identities in a new world. Elements of African culture, such as religion, language, and folklore, endured, and they were links to their past lives. In the process of Americanizations, Africans formed another culture known as Afro-Americans or Creoles. Throughout the 60s, racism changed dramatically in various ways. Changes involved the passage of bills into laws as well as involving the overall attitude of the people. Racism was largely based on white people's hatred towards black until the 1960s, when several major events increased animosity both from whites towards blacks and from blacks towards whites. To name a few, the Freedom Riders, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Rosa Parks, also including the integration of schools, as observed in this image, were all events that changed history. In many ways, racism is still very much alive in America. However, it is very different than what it was in the 17th century and even in the 1960s.